and what led to this scenario and why we're here.
The closer that I am to this issue, the harder it's going to be for me to take on board.
People will sit there because that is actually easier than confronting our ego.
This is a chance for you to improve.
What if you're in a position where you're not getting that feedback, but you feel stuck? All right, our topic for today is about growth and being able to take a very honest self-assessment, as we call it, a brutally honest self-assessment. Jocko said once, and I love this quote, when the truth hurts, the answer is more truth. What do we mean by that?
This is a tough one because if you can't confront the truth, right, then you can never actually improve. If you can't accept reality for as it is, if you're going to deny what the reality is, then you're never going to improve. You're never going to fix the problem. You're never going to actually get better at what you're trying to do. And when the truth hurts, it's usually because there's accuracy to that, right? So I grew up in a family where being on time was like, listen, it doesn't happen. We're running late to everything. That's the way it is.
I would have never guessed that.
I know that's shocking to you, right? So that's something I struggle with, where Jocko is like on time for everything. That's super important, to him. And so that can be a struggle for me. I have to be very diligent about that. We all have strengths and weaknesses, and I think you have to be aware of those weaknesses. But if you give me a hard time for being late, if you give Jocko a hard time for being late because he's never late to anything, it's like no big deal. It's funny. If you give me a hard time for being late, I'm like, there's some truth in that. It hurts a little more. And my ego gets involved, like how Jamie's calling me out in front of the team. And now all of a sudden, I get more defensive because there's truth in what you're saying, and that I have a hard time. I struggle with being on time for things, and that's a continual challenge for me to be able to prioritize and execute, get to where I need to go early, not just on time, but early. And so that's what we mean, right? When the truth hurts, the only answer is more truth. The truth hurts because it is true, and I have to accept that truth to recognize, like, oh, I do have an issue with showing up places on time or getting to a meeting on time. I need to be more diligent about that. I need to think about that. I need to prioritize efforts. I need to see what that looks like to everybody else. And that's an area for me to work on. So that is what we have to do when the truth hurts, is accept the reality for what it is, conduct a brutally honest assessment of ourselves to say, hey, what can we do better? This is an area that I can improve on. Man, if it hurts me, why does it hurt? Okay, my ego's getting involved because there's truth in what they're saying. I need to work on that. I need to improve.
And something that can help in those scenarios is just remembering why that other person is telling you the truth. It's not because in most cases they're trying to get one over on you. It's not because they're trying to break you down. It's because they care and they're trying to make you better, and they're trying to develop you. So I had this scenario when I was a troop commander. We were out at our land warfare training, which is a very important training block. Our commanding officer came out there. He was my favorite boss I ever worked for in the Navy. Really loved this guy. And during our first night's debrief, he gets up there to kick the debrief off, and he's basically debriefing things that I did wrong or could have done better. And that was a big shot to my ego because, one, I'm like, man, I'm the troop commander. I'm overall in charge here, and I'm kind of getting spotlighted on the mistakes that I made in front of my team, which, that hurts the ego. So night one, that's what happens. And again, his points were valid points, things I could have done better. Night two, go out there, make some corrections. You have a good night. Come back, we debrief, and again, he's bringing up some things that I could have done better, and my ego is just really struggling with this feedback. So the debrief wraps up. I felt like I was being maybe a little bit combative in the debrief, where I was pushing back on some of the things or trying to defend maybe my thought process on some things. So I went, when the debrief was over, and I pulled the Master Chief aside, who was running land warfare, who was a mentor of mine, who I had a really good relationship with. And I said, hey, I just need a sanity check. Like, am I being a little bit, pushing back too hard against my boss? And he's like, yeah, for sure you are. And then he goes, why do you think he's saying these things? And at the time, I think my ego was blinding me and I didn't really see it. And I said, I don't know. And he goes, it's because he cares about you. And as soon as he said that, it was like this shot to the gut of, oh man, my ego has totally blinded me to the fact that my boss flew out here or drove out here 3 hours to the desert to observe me in training so that he could provide me some mentorship that's going to, at the end of the day, make me a better operator. And instead of being initially thankful for that feedback, I let my ego get in the way, and it was a barrier to me, one, taking that feedback on board, and two, more importantly, seeing that my boss was investing his time and his energy in trying to make me the best troop commander that I could possibly be.
The reason that worked is because you took the initiative to get an understanding for what the truth was. Hey, I don't like this feedback. I'm feeling frustrated here. Let me ask some questions. How am I being perceived? A couple episodes ago, we talked about receiving feedback and thinking of feedback as a gift. This is information you didn't previously have. This helps you to get better. Part of, understanding the truth is, yes, we get feedback from people, but it's our willingness as individuals to actually take that self-assessment ourselves and recognize, hey, I'm missing something here. I was doing some strategic advising with a leader who is struggling because she feels like she has hit the ceiling or opportunity of growth within her organization. And she keeps pushing to move into another role, and she's getting some barriers and blockades to that progress. And when I ask her about her perspective, her side of the story, the truth that she's seeing for herself, it's always rooted in, I don't know because I'm doing all these things right. I've been crushing it here. I get amazing feedback. The people love me. I get this on my reviews. And so in her mind, the barricade to forward progress within her organization is because of someone else or something else, not because of something she's doing. And as I was talking to her, I was like, listen, here's what we need to do. You need to change the narrative of going in and having these conversations and asking for this potential opportunity, because you've tried that and it hasn't worked. So what you need to do is, I want you to take a very brutally honest self-assessment and do an audit of your areas for improvement. All you've told me is all the things that you're doing really well. And it tells me that you haven't done a good assessment or have enough self-awareness to recognize the things that you're not doing well, the things that are likely the actual reason you're not getting these opportunities. So I want you to spend some time, because as I asked her that question initially, she didn't really have an answer. She wasn't really clear on well, I'm not really sure what I could do better. And I was like, that's where you got to spend your effort and energy. And you got to really sit in that and tell yourself the truth so that you can go into these conversations much more prepared. And I think that's a better approach. Hey, I've recognized that for all the things that I might be doing right, here are the ways in which I am failing. Here are the ways in which I need to improve massively if you're going to trust me in this new position. And here are the action plans and steps I'm going to take to earn that. That is a much different and much more effective conversation than sitting in the truth you've created in your mind, which is, I'm awesome, I'm doing a great job. So I think there's some power in that self-audit of where do I need to improve, and then being comfortable in the uncomfortable truth of the findings.
And it's super important for everyone on the team and in life to do those honest self-assessments, but even more so for leaders to do that, because the leaders have outsized impact on the organization. So if I have someone on my team that's not doing these self-assessments, yeah, it's going to affect the whole team, but it's not going to be the same as if the leader is not doing an honest self-assessment and if they think they aren't making mistakes. And when I was running our training command, I would have to debrief at the end of the day, at the end of these different runs that we would do with the platoon commanders. We'd sit down and we would go through an in-depth debrief self-assessment for their performance that night. And, making a mistake was not a red flag. Everyone coming through that training is going to make mistakes. And that's the purpose of the training, is to learn, get better, make the mistakes here so that we don't make them overseas. The red flag was when we had a platoon commander that could not take on board the feedback, that could not do an honest self-assessment. When I was in that position, I never made a call to a commanding officer of a SEAL team and said, listen, one of your platoon commanders made a decision tonight that was so egregious that you need to replace them. But I did make more than one call to a commanding officer and said, your platoon commander is not open to feedback, and their ego is blinding them to the mistakes that they made. And I think you need to remove this person from this position, because they're going to keep making the same mistakes, and it's going to keep impacting and dragging the team down.
One of my favorite Jocko quotes is, discipline is rooted in the truth that we tell ourselves. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. This is why humility is the most important quality in a leader. Of all the qualities in leadership, people are sometimes surprised to hear us say that. humility is the most important quality in a leader. And the reason is because if you can't actually have that brutally honest self-assessment, you're never going to improve. You're never going to get better. And this is one of the reasons that Jocko and I wrote the book Dichotomy of Leadership as a follow-on to Extreme Ownership, is we tried to focus that book on all the challenges that we were seeing with the leaders that we were getting a chance to work with. And, of the hundreds of leaders that we worked with at that point, we saw that many, many times. It's a very common problem. And in the leader and a follower chapter of Dichotomy of Leadership, I wrote about this same issue where a leader that we were working with, who was a great leader and his team was doing really well, and his boss that he didn't have a great relationship with had said, listen, there's some things that you need to improve on. Well, and so the performance evaluation that they got was tied to their bonus, was tied to their compensation. So they didn't get a super stellar evaluation as he had expected, this leader that I was working with. And so he came to me and he was like, I can't believe that he's doing this to us, and this is crazy, and this is, he's nitpicking stuff. And so the question I asked him was, is there merit in what he's saying? Like, are there ways that he can improve? And we went round and round in this conversation. And it took probably 30 or 45 minutes of back and forth, to where he finally kind of put his emotions in check, put his ego in check, and said, yeah, there is. We could definitely improve. There's definitely some validity to the things that he's saying. Now, do I think that maybe he's being a little overly harsh? Yes, but certainly we can improve. And I was like, this is a chance for you to take ownership, because if you don't actually accept the reality as it is, and you don't actually take ownership, you're never going to actually improve. You're never going to get better. And to this leader's credit, he took that on the chin, went in there, accepted the less than stellar evaluation, and worked harder to fix the problems. He did fix those problems. He led his team to success, and created a really exceptional team as a result. And so that's something that we have to do as leaders is, the answer when the truth hurts is more truth.
And the closer that I am to this issue, the more emotionally attached that I am to the feedback, the harder it's going to be for me to take on board. And what I mean by that is, why was it so hard for me to take on board the feedback that my commanding officer was giving me? Because I really cared about my troop. I wanted to be the best troop commander. I wanted us to have the best troop. I really cared about the reputation of our troop. So that was really hard for me to take that feedback on board, because I was so emotionally attached to my troop and to my performance as a troop commander. And as emotionally as attached as I was to that, it pales in comparison to how emotionally I am attached to trying to be a good father, trying to be a good husband. And if you have kids, they're the best thing that will ever happen to you, and they're walking, talking, adorable little fault finders, and they will point out every single place that you're deficit as a human being. And the other day, my oldest son, Ronan, who's 14, I forget exactly what the exchange was, but we were talking about something, and he goes, "That's just your ego talking, Dad." And after my face went back to its normal complexion after I was flushed red with anger, I realized he's 100% right. Like, that was my ego talking. And the reason that it was so hard for me to hear that was I'm so emotionally invested with the success of my family that was really hard feedback for me to take on board from my 14-year-old son, who, by the way, was correct. So the closer that I am, or the more emotionally I am attached to these things, the harder it's going to be for me to be open to that honest feedback. If someone came to me and said, "Sean, you're terrible at golf," literally would not matter to me whatsoever, because I don't play golf and I don't care about golf. But you give me something, a critique in something that I am passionate about, that I do care about, and now it's really hard for me to be open and detached enough to take that feedback on board.
But what happens for a lot of people is they think, or at least it feels in the moment, easier to sit in this space of everyone else is wrong, I'm right, like my circumstance isn't a result of anything that I have done. It's as the result of other people that have put me here, and to sit in that feeling of the world is against me. And that we know that's not the truth. And people will sit there because that is actually easier than confronting our ego, than pulling the thread to find the truth, because the truth does not feel good. It's the same reason why extreme ownership is so hard. At the end of pulling that thread, as we ask ourselves these earnest questions, as we really, dig into understanding the truth of our circumstances and what led to this scenario and why we're here, we will always find that it anchors back to us. There is something that we did. Yes, do people impact our lives? Absolutely, they can have an impact, but we get to choose how we respond in those situations. And too often, when we pull the thread and it anchors back to us, we realize it doesn't matter what other people are doing to us. We have a lot more control than we like to admit. And I think we struggle with that because then we have to really sit with the truth, which is, oh, I screwed this up. This is my fault. I'm here in this bad situation or this dark time in my life as a result of me. And I wish I could help people in those moments recognize that while it feels hard, the easiest way to get out of it is to actually accept the truth, which is, what is the truth? It's extreme ownership. It's to actually look at those scenarios and say, okay, I am at fault. And if we can just say that and get that out there in the universe and confront that truth, we can actually find a path forward for, now I understand this is my fault. And now I can actually go do something about it and regain some control in my life to change the circumstances, to change the truth of the situation I'm dealing with.
If you don't accept reality, right, you're never going to make those changes. And you're right, the hardest and biggest hurdle for that is ego. I love that plaque that we gave out this year at our council event, which is our 2-day event. We go up in the mountains of Eastern Washington and we detach and we really think very strategically with the very small group of leaders. And the plaque that we gave out is a mirrored plaque that says problem identified on it. So you look at that plaque and you're looking at yourself.
Oh, shoot. It's my fault.
And but it's the reality. And I think for people, it stings the ego to admit that it's your fault. It hurts your ego. But the reality is we all make mistakes. We all screw things up. We all fall short of the mark. And I think the power in extreme ownership is the recognition that everybody does that. It doesn't, and when you take ownership of something, it doesn't make you look weak. It actually makes you look strong. It doesn't make people lose respect for you. They actually gain respect for you. They lose respect for you when you point fingers, cast blame, make excuses, or really deny the truth. They gain respect for you when you take ownership. And so the power in extreme ownership is to recognize that it's humbling, but it's liberating. It is humbling to recognize that it is your fault, that you screwed up, that you actually can do better, and that you could have communicated better, that you could have built a better relationship, that you could have checked in with someone to make sure that they were on the right track and see what kind of support that they needed instead of just getting frustrated with them. That's humbling to realize that it's your fault. But it is liberating to know that everybody screws up, and all you have to do is to take ownership of that problem and implement a solution to fix it going forward. And that is, you're going to solve that problem. As you said, you have the power to solve the problem. You are taking ownership, and ownership gives you the power to solve the problem, the pathway out of the problem. That's the pathway back from whatever difficult situation that you're in. And it has to start with that brutally honest assessment, with recognizing the truth of the situation.
Yes, the best leaders seek the truth, not comfort.
Yeah, there's no growth in comfort. I mean, the only growth is through stress and a certain amount of pain. And that doesn't matter if you're talking about growth performance-wise as a contributor or a leader. In any arena, if you want to, get stronger, you've got to put your body under stress and a little bit of pain. We've got a guy on the team named Noah, who's a savage and runs these crazy 100-mile races. Noah, in order to run a 100-mile race, has to put his body under a lot of stress and a lot of pain to be able to go out and do that.
He could use my method, which is to sign up for a marathon, don't
just
train,
don't show up,
and then wing it.
Oh, heck yeah. My method is I just don't show up.
Yeah, but you know where I suffer the pain? On the race.
Exactly. There's no getting around it, right?
That's the Buzz mantra. Yeah. If you're going to be stupid, you better be strong.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. So
not recommended.
There is no growth in comfort. It is going to be stressful. It is going to be painful to open yourself up to the idea that, hey, you are going to make mistakes. But all that does is put you in the same category as literally every single other human that's ever existed. You're going to make mistakes. And unless you're willing to learn from those mistakes and embrace those mistakes, you're not going to grow. You're not going to get better. And you're going to find yourself in the exact same position that you're in right now.
So how do people find the truth? What if you're in a position where you're not getting that feedback, but you feel stuck? How do you gain that truth?
So if you're in a position, if I understand correctly, where maybe your boss is not the best at giving feedback, that's a perfect opportunity to take some ownership. One, you should always be doing your own self-assessments so that you're at least somewhat aware of your performance or what you think your performance is. And then I would just go and sit down with my boss and just ask them, hey, what are things that I can do better? What are some areas that you've seen that I can improve? And then I would go and have that same mentality and sit down with my peers who are going to see things from a different perspective. And I would ask them those same questions as well. And that can go not just in the work environment, but the home environment as well. Like sit down with your spouse and just ask them, hey, how can I support you better? What are some things that I can do that would make your life easier? Things like that. And then just stand by for the answers.
Well, you need to be mentally and emotionally and ego checked. You need to be all those things in order to receive the truth you might get that's going to be uncomfortable or hard to hear.
100%. Yeah, you have to be willing to take that on board if you're going to go and ask those questions.
I learned this when I was running the leadership course, right, for junior officers, which you went through, and we would give a survey at the end of that of like things that we can improve. I'm looking to improve. And yet when I get some comment in there of like, oh, this could be better, this should be improved, you're like, are you kidding me?
What do you know?
These young SEAL candidates, they're not even SEALs. They don't even know how much effort went into setting this up. So this is how we're programmed. And we do this now at Echelon Front. We talk about how humility is the most important quality of leader, the power in extreme ownership. And yet when we ask for feedback, it stings, it hurts. You immediately get defensive. So you have to recognize that you're probably going to react that way. And you have to absolutely stay ahead of that. That's spot on. The only way that I think you can prevent that from kind of bristling is when you recognize like, okay, when I do get the feedback, let me not be defensive. One tactic that I would use on that is, if Jamie, you're my boss and, I'm asking for feedback, you're like, yeah, everything's good. Then I need to actually critique myself. Because when I start like, listen, boss, I know there's some stuff. I need to make sure that I show up on time for meetings. I need to make sure that I deliver on this particular project we've been running behind on. That's something I've really struggled with. If I kind of critique myself, you're like, yeah, you could improve in those areas. You're more willing to probably give me some feedback if I start with critiquing myself. And sometimes the boss is just busy. So you may be busy. I may not get that feedback. And so I definitely should sit down and ask questions of my peers. All those recommendations are spot on. But how can you prioritize that, right? You got a lot of people across the team. One thing I would say to do is, who's doing things better than you're doing them? If I'm struggling to meet my KPIs, but Sean's over here knocking them out of the park, then I need to go ask, like, hey, Sean, man, you're doing really well here. I'm actually struggling, to meet those numbers. What are you doing that's enabling you to do that? What are some things that I might be able to improve on? So when you reach out to people that are doing things better than you, or maybe have more experience than you, this is a huge thing. We did this in the SEAL teams. A lot of the sniper missions that we were running in Ramadi, there was a group of Marine snipers from 38 Marines that was on the ground in Ramadi. They'd been there for several months prior to us. We went and talked to them. These are very capable, talented snipers that were doing great work, disrupting a lot of enemy attacks, and had learned a lot of lessons learned. We went over and asked them, hey, what are you guys doing? What'd you learn? And built a good relationship based on them because they'd been on the ground. We built a great relationship with them because they'd been on the ground. They had experience that we didn't have. So look for those people that are doing things well that maybe you're not doing well. We all have strengths and weaknesses. And so if I can lean on the people that have strengths in the areas that I have weaknesses, then I'm going to be able to improve there. In all aspects of your life, this is a chance for you to improve, right? Whether you want to lose weight, whether you want to be in better shape, whether you want to be a better father, a better mother, better husband, whatever position you are, a spouse, parent, be a better leader. The skill of leadership that we know is not a skill that any of us are born with. We have to learn that skill. We have to develop that skill. We have to lean on the people who have more experience, who are better in certain areas than us. And we have to have that brutally honest assessment of ourselves and seek the truth and accept that truth so that we can get better and grow and improve. That is the pathway to us becoming better in all aspects of our lives.
100%. Whether it's business, at home with our families, or in our life, we have to get out of our comfort zone and seek the truth. So the immediate action drill for this week is to identify one uncomfortable truth that you have been avoiding in your life, say it out loud, and then put together an action plan for what you're going to do to solve towards that.
And the thing that's hardest to write down is the thing that you need to write down most, right? Because that's exactly what we're talking about, right? The truth hurts. If it doesn't hurt, then that's probably not the thing that you need to be focused on. So you want to find something that you know is a deficiency. It should hurt to write that down because it stings your ego. What is it hurting? It's hurting your ego. But you got to put that ego in check. That's how you're going to improve. And when you do that, that's going to enable you to get better. When you get better, everybody around you is going to get better. And that's going to enable you to lead and win in your life.
Find us on YouTube or wherever you like to listen to podcasts and do all the things you're supposed to do. Like, subscribe, share, leave us a review, but most importantly, send us the leadership challenges that you're facing right now so we can target our next episodes to helping you understand how to apply the principles of extreme ownership to solving those challenges.
Check out our free resources at echelonfront.com, or you can take the next step and join the Extreme Ownership Academy, our online training platform where we go deeper on these principles and teach you how to apply them in your business and in your life.